Hi everyone, it's Sonia McDonald, and I'm the CEO and founder of Leadership HQ McDonald Inc. And here I am today with the remarkable Peter Murphy. He's the Chief Talent Officer, and also he's a board director. He's an advisor of C3 Talent as well. So C3 Talent is where he's Chief Talent Officer, but also you're Managing Director as well. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, jointly with Kelly. We share my business partner, Kelly Howard, Sonia, we share those tasks. I do all the tasks Kelly doesn't want to do. So we jointly try to bounce off each other, which is good.
I'm sure she's going to love hearing that. She's such an incredible leader as well. So they are definitely my go-to for everything. And I recommend my clients to them around anything to do with search, recruitment and talent. They are so, and they're also partners in our Courage conference that's coming up in November, which we're very excited about with Christine Holgate and Paul Scarra, and also our Outstanding Leadership Awards. And I know Peter and Kelly, and Peter on today, is particularly passionate about great leadership, great talent, courage, kindness, being inclusive. So tell me about this, like when you look at what's going on around courage and leadership, why is this important to you?
Look, it's interesting, Sonia. I go back over my whole professional career, which is about 35 years now, and you could probably count on, one hand the number of leaders who leave an indelible memory on you, and they stand out for exactly the reason that they were courageous in terms of making decisions that, stood out from the crowd, may not have been right at the time a lot, but were for the benefit of everyone at the time. And I think, in the current crisis of, and I'll call it that, the world with, COVID and everything, if we're not careful, leaders seem to be going to the lowest common denominator. Leadership actually, from my view, requires you to go against the grain. There was a great mentor I had who unfortunately died about 18 months ago at the age of 62, a motor neurone. But he always had a line that to be a true leader, you had to swim upstream against the tide. And I think at the moment, everyone's just going with the flow. And what you end up with then is you go down to the lowest common denominator. And, I spent this week reading twice. My daughter, who's in HR, sent me the book about the Resilience Project by, and I can never say his name right, Hugh Van Kleinberg, the Victorian school teacher. And, he has a simple but a very strong message in terms of how he goes that, gratitude, empathy and mindfulness, I think, underpin a lot of what you then get into your points about courageous and kind leaders. I think being a courageous leader doesn't mean you have to be a complete, excuse my French, hard ass. It means that you make the decisions for the benefit of everyone. And, we do, you do see examples, at times of that. And I don't think any leader goes in to make a bad decision. I just think either a lack of information or making a quick decision at times ends up in the wrong decision. And I think on a political level at the moment, there's too much about what's in it for me rather than what's the right decision for the benefit of everyone.
Yeah, it does seem to be, which I love the Resilience Project book. I actually mentioned them in my latest book, First Comes Courage, and I talk about that there seems to the courage to be unpopular. I think that, and also this will make you laugh, right? I wrote about Paul Scarra in that chapter, and I sent him the book with a post-it note, right, and said, "I'm so sorry you're in this chapter." But he was really humble about it. He said, "Yeah, but sometimes you need to be unpopular. It's not about popularity. Leadership isn't about being popular. Sometimes we need to make those tough decisions because they're going to be for the greater good." But at the time, and I agree, I think at the moment I think we're exhausted as well. I think we're tired, we're exhausted, and therefore I think we are just going down the stream now because it's just like we're trying to swim, and we're trying to. Someone said to me the other day, they checked in on me and they said, Sonia, we're all on the same sea. I'm in a different boat from you, but I'm trying to navigate the sea with you. And I can see you're trying to, I want to help you navigate it. But I don't want everyone to get complacent and just kind of let the boat just kind of wander through. And we have to kind of navigate this and also speak up, courage to speak up and create.
And you've got to be, you know, I mean, you know, some of the posts I've put up recently, you know, it's a bit of a, let's say in my mind, you may think it's a bit of a social experiment, you know, and watching some of the, you know, the comments back, you go, wow, would I put that up? You know, everyone's entitled to an opinion, but the way the world is now, particularly with the vocal minority, you're only entitled to an opinion if it's their opinion. Otherwise, you get, you know, shot down in flames. And you know, watching, I suppose, some of the experienced journalists try and call out poor leadership from, you know, fellow journalists, from commentators, from political leaders, from business leaders. You know, it's fascinating because they do have to swim against the tide, and they get belted. And now they have just as much right to have an opinion as others. But you know, the world becomes a poorer place for the lack of leadership. You know, I mean, if you go back in time, you know, and I'm not declaring what's happening today to think, but you know, why did Hitler get through? Because Chamberlain and others were weak. You know, Churchill stood up to him at the end of the day, and you know, and you know, and then there are examples of that. You know, I've read a lot about Mandela as a leader, and you know, he'd be turning in his grave about what's happening in South Africa at the moment. But as a leader, I mean, when he walked out of Pretoria prison, you know, having been in Robben Island and I visited his cell in Robben Island, he had every reason in the world to be bitter. You know, he could have taken all the Zulus and all the black Africans with him and torn the place apart, and he didn't. You know, the way he embraced Pienaar around that whole Rugby World Cup in '97, which was, you know, very big for the Afrikaans. And I mean, that's what true leaders do. And you know, they don't take the easy decision. You know, they actually, your point, they don't care whether they're liked. They actually care whether they're respected and trusted. And you know, and I think, you know, you mentioned Paul. I think Paul's a great example of that over the time. I mean, you know, what I've heard secondhand from people in terms of the tears in Virgin the day Paul worked out, you just think, you know, there wouldn't be many corporate leaders who'd have tears when they left the business, you know, because, you know, and I think, you know, there's not enough of them who make the right decision. You know, there's a few great examples, and you know, JobKeeper was an example for leadership. You know, a lot of leaders and a lot of shareholders took the money from the government and kept it themselves and made big profits. You know, if you want to read fascinating, that main freight business in New Zealand, which I think is probably one of the most ethical businesses in the world, if you look into it, they took the New Zealand equivalent of JobKeeper at the start, but they put it in a separate bank account because they didn't know whether they'd need it. After 10 weeks, they decided they didn't need it. They said the hardest thing, the irony of it, the hardest thing in the world, they said, was to give money back to the government because there wasn't any mechanism for that. You know? Yeah. But at least they did, in their eyes, what was the right thing. And I think, you know, too many, and this isn't over something, but too many leaders are what's in it for me. Whereas if you want to build an exceptional team, you've got to be a leader who people will follow and the rewards will follow for you. And I mean, you know, hopefully out of COVID, people are saying, well, there's more to life than material things, because how much do you need? You can't take it with you when you die, you know.
And I think I think as well, what's happening is that we're realizing what's really important during COVID as well.
Oh.
That's what's been really powerful, is that we've realized that, you know, that it was interesting, even before COVID hit and we launched the awards, and here I was around championing kind, courageous and inclusive leaders and leadership. People then, COVID hit, and then we were out there kind of talking about this type of new way and new style of how we need to focus on as leaders. People said, I get it now. I think this is, you know, it's that legacy, you know, that leadership is about it's not about how much success. I mean, success and achievement is important. But about how much money you have or possessions or power or anything. It's about how we can all make a difference to each other and be kind and lift each other up to be more, learn more, and do more. But also you have to sometimes, as you said, like we have to make those tough decisions that are unpopular to do that as well. That I think we're missing that. I mean, what else do you think makes a courageous leader? I mean, what else would you love to see, or you are seeing in our leadership and leaders?
Look, I think the courageous leaders are ones that people want to follow. That people embrace their strategic vision or their journey. We get, I'm going to call it celebrity leaders. I often think the best leaders are the ones who quietly work, in the background and do stuff. And present in my mind, only because I read the Resilient Project book again last night. There's a great example Hugh has in there of his discussions when he takes Beefy, as he calls him, to Collingwood to meet Nathan Buckley. And Beefy was a guy who had some level of autism. He said Buckley's kindness was extraordinary for everything he did at the time, but he got to know Nathan really well, and he said that the amount of work he did for those less fortunate, speaking up for those, but he'd never let anyone talk about it, and then you get other leaders who make, a relatively small donation, and they shout about it from the rooftops. So I think, people want to be led by leaders who are good, decent people, but who are doing it for the benefit of others, and I think, teams know when there's a good and bad leader, so it's up to boards or it's up to the CEOs to say, well, okay, what are the leaders of business units or the like, what are the parameters we're judging them by, and I think too much is financial these days, and I think there's slowly a shift to, well-being of employees, and I don't mean simple employee, cultural surveys. I think in depth, how much are they engaged? How much have they bought into the division? Are they feeling safe at work to be able to speak up? Because Len Zioni in some of his work does some great work around, I suppose, what is the really effective leaders, and always his whole triangle, as you and me talked about the dysfunctional team. If there's not a level of trust, well, anything else doesn't matter. You can do all the team building exercises, you can have all the the well-being things, but as a leader, if someone doesn't trust you enough to come and talk with you in an open forum, and I think it's incumbent upon the leader to be present and have an understanding of what drives someone. So, what drives Sonia to get out of bed each day is different to me and the like. And I often think that, as a leader, if someone's not performing, it's ultimately your fault. And it means one or two things, I think. Either you've promoted them above their level of competence and haven't given them the support to get there, or secondly, you haven't made clear what you expect of them and are going to hold them accountable for. But, too many leaders, when it gets hard, shoot people to make them look good. They think that's changing. And I see that quite often when new people go in, I've got to bring in a new team. Well, the team were performing well beforehand. How do we do that? And it's something where in the early stages to say, well, what can we do as part of the talent attraction process to make sure that the team and the new leader or gel, and there's no easy answer to that, but it's something we're working on in terms of trying to develop a product that helps team and helps panels to recruitment get that right. And it's more than the cultural fit; it's the alignment of what does this team need in a leader? Sometimes a business requires a leader who's going to blow the place up. Why? Because it's poorly performing, and that's a different style of person from someone who will steadily lead things through. I will interview people who will say to me, Peter, if this role requires a steady as she goes person, I'm not your person. I like the challenge of fixing it, and that comes back to someone's DNA. It's the classical question always, Sonia, is is leadership in your DNA or can it be taught? And I think some leaders are lucky that it's in their DNA, but I think others, if it can be taught, but it can't be contrived.
Yeah.
You've got to be absolute, and you've got to be genuine. And the other thing you've got to accept, the world beyond is you're not going to get on with everyone. Having put up some of those posts lately, I know not everyone likes me, but it's you think that quote, I think you've got it in there from, I'm going to get it wrong, I think it's from Roosevelt, about the man in the arena. At least you have a crack. I give my kids for their birthday, sort of 21st birthday, a framed copy of the poem "The Man in the Mirror," and I won't go through it, but it finishes up that ultimately each individual is only responsible to one person, and it's the individual you look at it in the mirror at the end of the day. So if you try and cheat yourself through the pathway of life, the only person you're cheating is yourself, and you get found out. The karma bus hits you. I'm a firm believer in that.
Yeah, it's like that person in the mirror. Who do you want to be in terms of that person in the mirror? What do you want to stand for? So this is why I think integrity, staying aligned to your values, self-awareness. I think, and you talk about trust. I mean, I'm a great believer that trust in center poles, like the center pole of leadership, right? And that's why people, love the fact we're on this kind of courage and kindness movement, because the way to build trust is through empathy and kindness. When you show gratitude, that you show you care. I mean, Alistair Dawson's just put a post up just to let you know. I'm going to click it on. I'm going to put it on. The ethical behaviour of some of our companies who took JobKeeper, then didn't hand it back when they made significant profits is a disappointing feature of our business landscape. Unfortunately, adversity often demonstrates the real culture of companies and governments and leaders. I think we saw the best and worst leaders, and I think the leaders that were truly courageous were the ones that went, hey, I don't know what's going on, or I don't know how to navigate this, and they were really honest, and also that they were there to serve others. I was listening and talking and meeting with so many great leaders in HR departments and leaders that were telling me that their CEOs went, right, this is for our people. I'm going to not take a salary. I'm not going to do this, and I expect the same. So seeing that was, so in leadership terms, we're not seeing our best, which is, I guess, Alistair, what you're saying. And he's been writing some really great posts around leadership at the moment. Rosemary, leaders can be taught, but if it doesn't come from the heart, then it is not a title. It's not a title, not an action. It has to come from the heart. So yeah.
So can I pick up on one thing? I ultimately think that great leaders have two underlying traits, and I'd love to know where they come from. But there's your point about the self-awareness, and that's a willingness to take criticism. It's a willingness to be vulnerable. It's a willingness to say I got it wrong. And that's a problem with the whole political arena worldwide at the moment. There's no political leader who will admit they got it wrong, because social media might smash them or the like. But the other thing is, I think, is that humility. It's a lack of ego. It's not about me. It's not about what I can get out of it. It's how I make the place better. It's leaving, a footprint, or leaving whatever you were for that small period of time in a better way. And I think, there are leaders. I often, I used to have this debate to people over the last decade. I said, who have been the great world leaders, probably since Mandela gone, and there's probably only two political leaders I think have left a footprint. One might be a little bit cardinal, but I think what Merkel did at stages, particularly when there was that flood of Syrian refugees, and she let 1 million of them in, which was probably to the detriment of Germans. And I haven't been there, but I just think that was the right thing to do. The other bloke who I always thought was outstanding was Key in New Zealand. You know, I would have loved to make him an Australian citizen and be Prime Minister for a period of time because, you know, he really got their economy going. You know, I mean, they punch well above their weight in terms of what they do and the like. And I just think, you know, he brought that business mindset. And there's a great story I remember hearing about John Howe, and I heard it from a dad I met at the boys' school. He used to be a referee because he actually reported to him at one stage in terms of when he came over, and he was then working with Canterbury, I think, in Victoria, and he wanted to join John Elliott's business, you know, the old, you know, Carlton United, whatever it was, XL or whatever. And he fronted Elliott at a conference in Melbourne and said, I want to work for you. And he said, oh, well, yeah, that's good. And he ended up doing it. But, you know, he followed him. You know, he took the leadership there. He then went and worked, I think, for Tula Tokyo in London. And then he came back and he goes back to his country. And I think leaders who give with no expectation of return, and there's numerous examples. You see it, I think, quite often in the not-for-profit sector, and I actually think that's an area which is actually benefiting at the moment from the point you made. COVID's made people think, well, what's more important? You know, if I can, you know, lead a business and make an impact. You know, those two young guys, Lucas and Nicholas Marcheski, with what they've done with Orange Sky Laundry, you know, extraordinary. You know, now, or they 25 or younger when they set it up. You know, they're the type of leaders that people are crying out for, rather than these, I'm going to say, the celebrity leaders. You know, you see some of these guys on Shark Tank and others where, you know, they berate people and it's all about, well, what can we get out of it and the money, you know. If you do the right things, the rewards will come.
Yeah.
Whereas I think too many people think, I want the rewards before I've earned it, you know. And, you know,
in the example of the leaders from Orange Sky, and I've spoken to them, they're actually finalists in our awards last year. They're so humble, you know, and I think they're so focused on their purpose and their whole vision. That's all that matters, you know. It's like, I mean, you know, and I sometimes think we see, you know, recently in the news this week with Afterpay and, you know, the founders and App Square buying them for like $39 billion. I think sometimes we kind of go, is that, you know, as you know, they're great leaders as well, but I just go, I think sometimes it's not about that always. It's about how to make a difference. And I mean, I'm also like, and they're two examples of great leaders. I am a bit of a fan of Jacinda Ardern's as well. She shows, even during this time, great humility and empathy as well.
Well, I love watching a show, Undercover Boss, that the States used to do, you know, where people dress up, and it was always, there's two things that struck me. One, the level of commitment from employees who are often poorly paid, you know, and you know how they treated people really well. The other, this was a shock at times from leaders, and then how, you know, they'd feel like they let their teams down, and like, you know, and I get it. As businesses grow bigger, you can lose sight of what you're about, and as you rightly say, what's our purpose? Why are we doing this? And you know, everyone has their vision, their values, their missions, and the like. But you know, can employees articulate them? But are they actually lived? You know, are they just a nice statement on the wall that, you know, we revisit, you know, every day? And I think they've got to come from the heart. They've got to be serious, and the right leaders will demonstrate to their team that that's what they, you know, that they actually mean it. I think, you know, Michael Chaney set up Wesfarmers like that. You know, he was extraordinary in terms of how he led, and I remember hearing him speak, and actually someone said it to me the other day in an interview that, you know, as a leader, I've just got to be the conductor of the orchestra. And I think too many leaders have to think they have to be the subject matter expert, or they have to be the smartest leader in the world. The best leader who is someone who's very comfortable in their own skin, and they employ better people than themselves. You know, I was fortunate enough to meet a gentleman by the name of Alan Cooney the other day. Alan's the acting CEO at NAPCO, and I'd recommend to anyone, if they had a chance, to listen to him. I mean, he was came off the land outside Cunnamulla, and what he's done in different cases. At one stage he led Casey State. He wanted to challenge himself, so he went and became the CEO of Casey Station in Antarctica for 12 months. And he did a lot of work in Alice Springs with Aboriginal community. But he just had, Julie Newman and myself were meeting him, and she just said, "Wow, he just had humility oozing out of his bones, I suppose, but he also had that awareness of what was required, and he would make right decisions." And you see that, and there's no doubt numerous other examples. People listening will all have their examples of different leaders who have inspired them and made their lives easier. I love, have spent a moment just searching on YouTube or whatever for those acts of kindness that inspire the world to do little things well, and there's so many of them, but people can overlook it at times because they think it's contrived or they don't think it's real, but I just think the real leaders do stand out, and I admire you greatly. I think the Courage Awards are what we need, because there's so much negativity around leadership, around business leaders, around political leaders, around our teachers. I mean, I think the hardest job in the world would be being a principal of a school these days. Why? Because parenting's been outsourced almost. It's, and then if little Johnny or Jenny doesn't get top marks, what's the teacher's fault? Well, it's not really. They're part of the equation, but what have parents done? And too often they're too busy, climbing the corporate ladder or the like, and that's a personal decision everyone has to make, in terms of, what what can you do? It's like what you've done for Abby in her times and stuff. She'll always remember that and be thankful for that, but there are obviously times when you would have gone, hell, I know there are times when Sam said to me, "You've got to be kinder on the kids." Yeah, you do. But there are times also when you have to be tough for them. It's like what we said. As a parent, you don't have to be their friend. But you got to love them, and I think leaders can too often try to be friends.
I think it's that that we see a bit in Australia. And I think that I find it challenging to have the courageous conversations, but also, I mean, the other reason why we're around the Stay Kind and Courageous is that we have this tall poppy syndrome as well. I think we're very good at, as you said, pulling people down versus lifting them up. And I think the reason why we're creating this movement is exactly what you said. There's so much negativity, and we see so much of the bad on social media and media around leadership. And leaders, again, we can all be leaders. It's not a role or title, but I want our future generations, I want our children to go, there's some amazing examples. Like, wow, we're seeing stories for a change. But for everyone that's listening as well, because Pete, I'd love to, I mean, Alice and Rosemary have made a few comments, and Alistair from Central Queensland Uni, they're also sponsors at our conference. Our awards have been an incredible partner. Has anyone got some of their favourite leaders that they'd love to comment about, or would they like to ask Peter a question? Because Peter, and I love it, especially Peter loves answering questions. So
I can talk all day about it. I mean, I just think there's, there are examples everywhere around the world of leadership, and it's not always, people who, have the limelight. I mean, I was fortunate. I'm trying to think of the time the other day. I think it was January 19. I went to Lencioni's first conference in Dallas, and the bloke who was the leader of a business, Chick-fil-A, which isn't here, but it's this extraordinary fast food business in the US. I think there's something like 2,300 stores. Doesn't open on a Sunday because it's a day for family, sixth generation. And just this bloke, I reckon he could tell you what every store manager did. And, he was just that leader who lived and breathed it and the like. And you know, there are, you know, and he wasn't doing it for the limelight. You know, yes, he probably was well rewarded. I don't know, you know, but just the joy. The right leaders are people who draw joy from seeing others grow, develop, or being satisfied, and that's not just from a monetary perspective. I think too often we assess things through an economic or a financial lens. You know, I think as a leader, just having a simple conversation at times and just, you know, being there for people, you know, and helping them in the tough times. That, you know, anyone can be a leader in a rising market when the tide's coming in. True leaders show their time, as you alluded to earlier, in the tough markets, you know, and that to some extent probably holds with employees as well, you know.
Oh, I think so, and I think, you know, and I've known you for a long time now, and I've done some work with you and your team. You've got a remarkable team, like your team,
Yeah.
and I think the reason why, other than the fact they're great people, is it also comes from you and Kelly. I mean, you drive and lead that culture as well, and you could tell they all felt safe, they all felt empowered. They all really cared about what they were doing and making a difference in that talent space, and you know, finding great talent and leaders for organizations and helping great talent and leaders out there as well, which I think they, you know, considering what's going on at the moment, I think it's so fundamental that we find the right people, because I think that's where you're making a difference in the market. So and also in the industry, as you know, through the times, it's those people that, I mean, even when COVID hit last year, and we were literally, the day COVID hit, we were about to announce our Outstanding Leadership Awards. And I said to the team, I said, we have to stay true to our vision, values. I know this is a shit show, but we're going to get through this. Let's stay kind and courageous. It's the only thing that we can do. And I know, working with you and your team, I got that real sense of the culture. Your culture as an organization was so key and fundamental to you and your leadership, and you set that. And I just think that a lot of leaders don't understand the power of how their behaviors and their values really are the fabric of setting that scene and making people feel safe. Rosemary's just said here, for me, Mother Teresa holds the lamp. Never see a wrong without doing what you can to do right are such incredible words in a strong direction. Sorry, but you're going to say something.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's interesting. I remember it's interesting, Rosemary talks about Mother Teresa. I went to a seminar she gave in Brisbane. It was just like this, you know, she was a unicorn. She's about 4'2", but, you know, what she did on the streets of Calcutta was important. But let's say the leader sets the tone more when they're not in the limelight. It's what they do away from the limelight that people will follow, rather than what they do in the limelight. You know, you look at everything around, what's his name, the governor in New York at the moment. There's not much doubt he should resign, you know, over all these allegations. Now, you know, but he's hanging on for grim death, and you hear and you see that at times with people, you know, and then you know, it's, you know, David Parkin's great thing as the coach of Carlton was it's the 1%ers that made a difference to the team, and it is, you know, a leader can set the vision, a leader can give, you know, the Churchillian addresses and everything like that, but if you're all talk and no action, people will see through you. You're a fake, you know, and you know, fakes get found out ultimately. You know, they just do what happens. People vote with their feet. They leave. They don't join in. You know, there's just simple things that need to be done that aren't done at times, and think, wow, you know, and I think that's, you know, that's important. I mean, I think, you know, there's so many leadership courses. There's so many, you know, training and everything. I actually think, you know, what you're doing, you know, what, you know, Hugh's doing in his resilience project, what Ben Crow does with his shift stuff, and also Lencioni. Leadership doesn't need to be complicated. It's very simple if you do the right things really, really well. And it's delivering on what you say you do. The best leaders will underpromise and over-deliver.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And I think that sounds a really simple thing, but and I get it. There's leaders who are hammered by the share market and the like. And it's got to be the forecast and time stamp. But the examples, and you and me have talked about them, Sonia. The Volkswagens, the Rio Tinto with what they did with the caves and whatever. Somewhere along the line there was a lack of leadership. People infinitely smarter than me will work out where, why, and the like. And I often think back. What are our kids and our grandkids going to think when they're our age? What were the leaders, business-wise, political-wise, or influential leaders doing, and what could have they done differently? And hindsight's a wonderful thing. Everyone's Einstein in hindsight. But the big thing's to make a decision, and then if you've got it wrong, and if you look at everything since March 20, that's happened with COVID. No one's made a bad decision on political leadership. And my concern about the whole debate in Australia at the moment is it's becoming toxic and it's dividing us when we should really be coming together. I wondered, what the Anzacs or the diggers in the Second World War would think if they, the blokes who defended the country in Kokoda and the like would think they'd turn in their grave.
Yeah. I put a poll about that up last week around navigating this as leaders of this country and this whole states, and everyone said we need to be together as one country. It's I mean, I've got my views about the borders and the thing, but I just go, we're our own country. It's
it's great. We're all in this together till it suits us not to be in it, is my thing. I mean, you look at the divide, and there's a long political lines at the moment. Well, you can't be all in this together if you don't do it. I was sitting next to someone, I won't say who, but someone with ex-political clout who's now gone in the business world, and I just happened to say to him, "What's your view on national cabinet?" And it's gone. And his view was that it suited all the premiers because they could sideline their oppositions. Wow. He said it wasn't all in there about supporting us; it just suited them and you go, if that's what we've come to, God help us. We're in a lot of strife. Was my concern.
Oh, and I mentioned this to you the other day. I mean, I've been talking to remarkable leaders and CEOs like yourself, or even around the globe. And the thing that's been really interesting is, and I just reach out to them about the lounge and the lives, interview them, and remarkable people from Russia, from France, from Malaysia, Thailand, the States was another one this morning. And I don't even bring COVID up because I'm trying to really change the focus and the language and the messaging. And they bring it up every time they go, "Oh, what's going on in Australia? Like, we're just sort of sitting here going, that just seemed like," and I'm thinking, oh no, like people are thinking, I understand that we've been amazing in terms of trying to keep people alive and the death rates, everything. That's just, they're all kind of going, we're getting on with it now. Like, we're just vaccinated. And I know there's a whole new thing around the vaccinations thing in that house, so that's taken, but like, we're just getting on with business and life now. And it's so frustrating to hear that sometimes. I'm like, oh no.
I was speaking to an audit partner in one of the big fours the other day, and he's responsible for a global audit based here. And he said he was speaking to this is probably going back to the lockdown before this, and he was speaking to his UK equivalent on a Friday night. And the bloke said, "How are you?" This is his UK guy. And he said, "Oh, we're gone into lockdown." And he said, the shock in this lockdown, well, what's happened there? And he said, "Oh, we've got 2 COVID cases." And he said, this bloke just laughed. He said, "You've got 2 cases." And he said, "We've probably got 30,000 a day and I don't know, a couple of hundred deaths." And he said, "It's really sad." But he said, "We're learning to live with it." And you can say that, and I'll be pillared for saying that, but I think in time there will be, if you want to say COVID's caused death, it'll cause death from people through mental anxiety. It'll cause death through suicide because people have lost their businesses. The social isolation. Speaking to an older mate yesterday who does Meals on Wheels, and he said, I've got to ring the people and leave at the front step. And he said, there was a lady yesterday who didn't come to the door, an 82-year-old, and she'd had a fall. And, there's just, the basic decency has been lost through some of this, in terms of, treating your fellow human being as your thing. I don't think there's anything worse than saying, you can have an Australian passport, but you can't come home. I've had conversations with young people who worked with me overseas, and one girl in particular, her and her husband and 3 kids had 5 flights booked at once at the height of COVID in March last year. In the end, it was easier for them to go to the UK to try and come home. And some of the comments she's had from people, you go, really? They were quite happy to quarantine and everything like that. And I just think, wow, and that's where we require real leadership rather than the point scoring from both sides of the political divide. I think they're both as bad as one another, and we do require business leaders to stand up and take us down. I listened to a seminar before this on social activism put on by Helen Besley at Roll, and it was interesting. And there's this American lady who said that, one of their, I think it was their Fleischman partner from New York, said, the business leaders now have a duty to stand up. The younger generation expect that they will be judged on their social responsibility. And I don't mean that just from a climate or a gender perspective, but, as you said, they'll look at the values and say, are you leading, and do you back up? And she gave a number of examples in the States about that, where, people are saying we stand for this, but then they're funding money into politicians who are voting against the legislation. And I think that, it comes back to what we're saying. If you're a fake as a leader, you get found out.
Yeah. And
it's absolute.
I think I agree. I think, I look at my daughter who's 19 now. She's like so savvy around the leadership arena. And all her friends are. I look at them and go, wow, at 19, I had nowhere near the level of awareness. And so my views and beliefs around what I'm seeing, but the younger generations they're wanting, but the thing is, it is up to us to have courage to kind of be leading by example, so we can go, this is what's right, what's not wrong. We have to be like, we have to have courage here. I'm a bit conscious of time.
I just think, I do have a 1 p.m. virtual meeting with the client. So,
I take half an hour, but I could talk to you all day about this. You know that. I just think you're so remarkable. So tell us around how we can get it. I have put your website on the live, so if you'd love to get in touch with Peter and his team, but how can we get in touch with you? How we can follow you? Would you like to share that with everybody listening?
Yeah, how can we get in touch? I think everyone thinks that you only need a recruiter when you need a job.
Yeah.
That's the simple thing. And most people do. That's the purpose. But I think we can help individuals with career profiling and the like. I think the easy task for us is to find a job. The hard task is finding people the right role that will satisfy them. So look, in terms of our website, it's as you say, it's c3talent.com.au, and it's got all our contact details on there. The LinkedIn is C3 Talent, and from there, or you can follow me. But we're our approach is to endeavour to help people and make a difference to the community. And our line of creating value through talent, that's for businesses and that's for for individuals as well. I think the talent war is about to get worse. I think the closure of borders and things like that mean that good talent are staying put because the devil they know is better than the devil they don't, and I'm seeing that in responses to search rates. I'm also seeing that clients are saying, well, we'll get through this, and then when we come out the other side, we'll change or we'll look at that. So good people need to back themselves, and good leaders will make the decision that if you've got someone toxic in your team, don't put up with it. There is someone better out there. Go and find them.
And I think that's where you add so much value to, you know, talent and clients out there. But I think the thing I love about what you're about is that you're really good about just having the conversation. You're very, I mean, even when you rang me last week, you're like, how can I support you and where are you at? And you just know how I call it, kind of like the spider's web, right? Like by just me reaching out to you, you've been able to help me greatly, but also as a candidate or client, if there are some things that you're thinking about, a new opportunity, or you need to look at, new, restructuring or new talent or new leadership, I definitely speak to the team at C3 Talent. They're amazing. Just even having a conversation, you just don't know how they'd be able to help you. But I just wanted to say thank you so much.
Okay. Well, thank you for the opportunity, son. Yeah.
Oh, my pleasure. We're just so proud of what you've created with C3 Talent, and can't wait to see you just grow. And we're here to support you. And thank you so much for being so committed to courageous leadership talent as well.
Okay. I look forward to the conference.
Yeah, I cannot wait for the conference. Please, let's the conference to happen.
Just hope we're not in lockdown then, hey? We've got 3 months. Yeah.
Anyway,
Okay.
safe.
Thanks, Sonia. All the best, hey.
You
Bye.
too.